Hi, readers. I've been thinking a lot about our nonfiction reading life that we've been starting and engaging in and all the work we've been doing already. And one thing that I've come across that I want to take some more time to talk to you about are some of the signals that we can make ourselves aware of as we read nonfiction. So let me tell you what I mean when I'm saying signals. So I'm thinking about when I'm like driving on a road and it says like warning, icy bridge, or when you are on a boat and it might say like rough waters ahead, or those danger signs that you see on the road. And it makes me think about how in nonfiction reading, there's so many times that I wish there would be a sign or something like that to tell me that things might be a little bit challenging, a little bit rough ahead. I find a lot of times in nonfiction, there's all these challenges I come across, and I have to use strategies a lot to figure out how to navigate that nonfiction reading as I'm trying to learn and gather new information. So today I want to talk to you about tackling those hard parts of nonfiction. What do you do when you get to those rough seas in your reading? What do you do when you get to that challenging part? How can you break down that passage in that reading to help yourself understand the text? So before we kind of get more into where we are going as nonfiction readers, let's take a moment and reflect on where we've been, because it will help us as we move forward in our nonfiction reading. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen with you. And as I share my screen, you're going to notice whenever our anchor charts that's featured on our Canvas homepage, I'm going to go ahead and click this magnifying glass and zoom in a little bit so we can figure out, how do we already know how to read nonfiction well? Well, we've already talked about making connections and previewing. We spent a lot of time on text structure and trying to figure out what does the author think is most important so that we know how to take those notes. So now we're at the point where, okay, now we're ready to take notes. We know the structure of the text. How do I actually read the text? What do I do when I get to that part of the text that does not make any sense to me and makes me feel confused? So let's take a moment and tackle that. I have already selected a text for you, and we're going to work together right now, and I'm going to kind of talk you through my thinking as I read this text. It's called A Sport by Michael Ox and Emily Butler Smith. So there we go. I'm going to make it a little bit bigger for you. I'm just going to read this first part here, Reasons Why. So I see the title is Sport, and this first section is called Reasons Why. I already feel a little bit confused. I feel like that's a little bit misleading, because reasons why what? Like reasons why there's a sport? I have no idea what this could potentially be about. So I'm going to mark this as a misleading heading. This is a challenge you might come across in your nonfiction reading that you're going to have to tackle. I'm going to read on. There are many different kinds of swimming strokes. Some of the most common strokes are the front crawl, back crawl, butterfly, breaststroke, and side stroke. What? Front crawl, back crawl, butterfly, breaststroke, and the side, like there's a lot going on there. So I'm going to take a note again. Here's another challenge you might come across in your nonfiction reading. That tricky vocabulary. And in this case, it's a little bit of a fact overload or specific vocabulary. There's a lot of stuff there I'm not totally familiar with, and I feel like it's coming at me at 100 miles an hour. Let's read on. It goes on to share with us, some of these strokes require a flutter kick, that is short back and forth kicks with feet, toes outstretched. Other strokes like the side stroke, butterfly, and breaststroke involve more specific kicks. Some swim strokes are made for fast, short distance swimmers. Others are designed for long distance swimming. So I feel like right now I'm not getting enough information. I feel like we just jumped into this level on this topic that I'm not totally familiar with. I'm not much of a swimmer myself. I feel like there's missing information. There's a lot about the strokes, but I'm like, wait. Like, what do these strokes even look like? I'm a little bit confused about what the flutter means. There's some information here that I'm not getting. So already as I read this text in this first paragraph, I'm already encountering some issues. I'm already encountering some things that I need to tackle in order to move on. As you read and you come across these things, it's important as a reader to understand, well, how do I tackle this challenge so I can continue reading and learning from this article? So with all of these things, we have to figure out, well, what do I do in these scenarios? So let's talk about what it means to tackle the hard parts. Here are some things you might notice as you engage in the nonfiction reading process. Misleading headings, we just encountered that. Reasons why? Reasons why what? Fact overload, confusing beginnings, long detours, and extra information. And sometimes those text features can challenge you, like graphs and diagrams. So, okay, we've done that work. We've noticed that. What do I do now? We have to take action. We have to find a way to make that information work for us. So some strategies you can use is rereading, taking a minute and asking yourself a question, specifically, what is this part teaching? What does the author want me to know here? That connects to text structure. And then maybe just talking it out and writing to understand. Sometimes it helps me just to say something out loud or write it down in my own words to see what I'm understanding and where I'm stuck. So if I go back to this text, it says, there are many different kinds of swimming strokes. Some of the most common strokes are front crawl, back crawl, butterfly, breaststroke, and side stroke. I'm thinking, okay, I can maybe make a quick boxes and bullets notes and say common strokes, and then say front crawl, back crawl, butterfly, breaststroke. So some of these strokes require a flutter kick. That is, that's giving me the definition. Now that I'm rereading and I'm slowing myself down, I'm realizing I'm catching a little bit more. So I'm going to take note probably in my notes. A flutter kick is short kicks with the feet. So I'm kind of like short kicks. Okay. Other strokes like the side stroke, butterfly, and breaststroke have more specific kicks. Okay, so that's just kind of some filler information. I wonder if it's going to give me more facts now. Some swim strokes are made for fast, short distance swims. Others are designed for long distance swimming. So now I'm pausing and I'm thinking, okay, depending on how far you go, you might swim differently. Okay, that's helping me a little bit. Now I'm kind of understanding. It's very important that we use these strategies in nonfiction reading because there's so many facts and so much new information coming at us. We really need to know how to slow ourselves down and figure out how can I make sense of this information. So that's something you're going to practice today before you continue engaging in your nonfiction reading independently. You're going to go ahead and open up your interactive journal for Bend 1. Okay, your interactive journal usually opens to this first slide here that gives you those directions on what to do. We've already completed slide 2, and we've already completed slide 3. We are on lesson 4 today, and we're talking about embracing that challenge of nonfiction reading. So your task today is going to be to review this passage, Why Swim? If you recall, that's actually the next section in the article we just read together. I want you to reflect and think about what's making it challenging for you. Maybe you want to take notes or use some of the strategies together, but figure out what is difficult. Then you're going to drag and drop the hard parts category that best suits, and then drag and drop what your action plan will be. So for example, if I read this and I feel like I think this is a fact overload, or I think this is extra information, whatever it may be, you're going to drag your mouse over it until you get those arrows and move it up and drop it. This was what was hard for me. Then think to yourself as a reader, what can you do to make it so you understand that information? I think I will talk and write to understand this confusing beginning. Okay, so all you have to do is drag and drop what you think is the best action here. Once you finish that, remember we do not submit our journal. You can go ahead and close that out, and then you can work on independently reading a nonfiction text. Happy reading.